Coogs House. The Houston Cougars got a lot better on the field on Thursday, but is there a catch?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you want to join the conversation but just don't know what to say, tell us. Okay, we had this conversation earlier today at our household anyway. If ketchup is technically just tomato jam or jelly or something like that. Today's show is brought to you by GameTime. Good partners over there will help you find the tickets to any events you want to go to. Great options on the seats. More on that later. But we have a ton of stuff to talk about, all involving one key signing in the transfer portal reported on Thursday for Houston. Got to talk about how it makes the defensive back room extremely feeling loaded, honestly, and what that says for Coach Zac Etheridge and that room. Talk about some of that at the end. I do worry about this signing. There's just, I don't even want to say red flag. Could just say there's a flag, a colorless flag. I want to talk about that in the second segment. But first and foremost, the news of the day in Houston Cougar football land is that 6'1", 180-pound corner JD Rhym, also known as JaDarian Rhym, committed to the Houston Cougars in the transfer portal. A big get for Willie Fritz and staff. Rhym had been a corner that got a lot of playing time as a freshman at Auburn in 2022. Was a key recruit in a very talented 2022 Auburn recruiting class. Their second highest rated recruit in that class, one of Hugh Freeze's best classes since he's been at Auburn. They had taken pride in flipping him from LSU to Auburn. And it sounds like part of the reason I've chosen Auburn was Coach Zac Etheridge. That's important because, as we'll talk about throughout the episode, Etheridge, the former DB's coach at Auburn, is now the DB's coach at Houston. And I don't think I don't think that's coincidental by any stretch in this signing. Now, before all of that, Rhym was he prepped at Valdosta in Georgia. He was, again, a high-end four-star recruit. If you're into the numerical rankings, Rivals gave him a 93, and he was a 92.8 composite. When you factor in the fact that there just aren't hundreds in those composite scores, that's really, really highly ranked, folks. He had a ton of SEC offers. I mentioned he had verbaled to LSU before committing to Auburn right before signing day, but he also had talked to Alabama and talked to Arkansas, talked to Ole Miss. He talked to basically the whole SEC about playing in that conference. And frankly, he is a big-time SEC kind of talent at high school. And I said to say that, Houston's building a program, those with established legacies and histories were absolutely up this guy's alley out of high school. As far as what you get on the field with him, I should point out that he played a lot of special teams as well as true corner at Auburn in that freshman year. In 2022, he played a lot of boundary corner there. And what Houston's doing, and on Houston's roster, I think he could play boundary corner or field corner. Now, if you're not sure what the difference there is, there are teams that will have a boundary corner because the football spends 2/3 or more of the game on a hash mark, less space to cover for the boundary corner, in open space less, as opposed to the field corner, which has much more of the field, the between the hashes and the other sideline. If you're the field corner, could have a lot more space. At Auburn, he played a lot of boundary as a freshman. I'd imagine Rhym could play either at Houston right now. We got some more on the DB room at the end of the episode, so obviously we'll get to that then. I thought the guy had a lot of strengths in watching what I could find of him on film. Less of than you would think, having been on a program like Auburn, just just I think that has to do with more when he was on the field. I thought, he had great recovery speed. Um, you, Freshman corners can tend to be a little bit slower in the hips than a veteran or a senior or something like that. And so he did not necessarily have that kind of speed that would have just jumped off the screen to me. But he definitely had great recovery speed. I mean, once he flipped open the hips, he could collapse the ball very, very well. Um, so I think that's a strength of his. He did have a pick as a sophomore, and I think he'll be the kind of guy that can develop into making those pick plays or like picking off the ball when it's the right time. Like I don't think he's going to go for the gamble in a Dallas has Trevon Diggs. He's not going to gamble like that necessarily. Um, I just know Texans actually do a pretty good disciplined job. There's no pro there to reference, but um, he doesn't seem to make the like he doesn't seem to lose, I should say, going for the over the top play, right? He is a solid guy around the ball. He's a long 6'1". I can't find an official wingspan on him, but he looks like to have a positive, like basketball player length wingspan. Um, I'm dancing around this all because I think the thing he does most impressively as a corner is not a skill you typically associate with corners, and that's he'll hit you. I mean, he brings contact. He enjoys contact. He seems to get super amped up as he's delivering contact and right after contact. I thought he played up at the line of scrimmage great as a corner. There'd be times where he was on a dead T side or there was not a receiver outside the tight end, and he would, frankly, be able to physically hold his own in the tackle box. I thought he played the line of scrimmage really well. He even in his high school film was kind of looked like he had like a blitz a game. It was just kind of when he felt like going. Really, really aggressive energy out of the kid in a lot of ways. And I'm excited about it. I think, truthfully, JD Rhym is the kind of kid that on the field steps to Houston and is one of the key impact players right away. I don't think that there's going to be an adjustment period or anything like that, especially when you factor in, like, in terms of coaching, he's played for Zac Etheridge before, terminologies, techniques, drills, what the coach is looking for. He should have some familiarity with that, frankly, in a way that even the most veteran of veterans on Houston's roster don't, right? And so it will be interesting to see kind of what that means for him on the field next year. Right now, my initial thought is I've got him penciled in as a starter on my sheet because I think he's that good. So I want to talk about why he's good all summer long, like celebrate the kind of kid this guy is on the field and what kind of things he brings to the table. Um, just exciting time with Willie Fritz, Zac Etheridge, Kevin Barbe, all the staff to be out here following who's coming and who's going. This is a big, big moment for the program, though. I do think there is kind of, sort of, maybe a little bit of a catch, or at least I should rephrase that, at least something to keep an eye on. But first, one thing you've got to keep your eye on if you're trying to get to a concert or trying to go to a comedy show or trying to go to the theater or anything that your self desires, the Astros games, you think they'd be cheap right now, but they're not. And you're like, where can I get a good deal? The answer is GameTime. Download the GameTime app today. GameTime's got all the deals you need and the prices you want to get into the action wherever you're looking to get into it. Great last minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, all kinds of different things happening all the time. It's a great, great option for people looking for the best prices. Game time ticket coverage means you are purchasing the most flexible customer service dealings in the entire ticketing industry. They'll help you out with whatever you need. Lowest price guarantee on all tickets means that Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you can find them a seat in the same row and section for cheaper somewhere else. So why don't you just take the guesswork out of buying tickets to the NBA playoffs or the MLB or whatever by downloading Game Time? Download Game Time app today. Create an account. Use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, now I think that I I'm starting to break down more film, and I'm giving you that this JD Rhym kid is truly like a potential pro at corner, right? And I don't want anything I say in the next segment, 8 to 10 minutes, to do anything to detract from that. Because truthfully, there's a chance this entire next segment I'm about to go into is just flushed and gone. And frankly, there's no one that would be more happy about that than myself. Well, okay, maybe Rhym and his family, but outside of that, right? Like, I don't think there's anybody. I do think, though, that his time at Auburn raises cause for concern. Now, honestly, some of this may be negated by the fact that Zac Etheridge is his position coach here at Houston. But before I get to the but, it's 2024. Come on, Parker. You've been talking about the transfer portal all the time. You know, guys just transfer. You're right. They do. However, first of all, I should point out from a talent perspective, he showed up to Auburn in 2022 as a class of 2022 kid and played right away. Now, he didn't start, but he played a lot. And that doesn't just happen for Hugh Freeze or Auburn, right? That's impressive. That's a feat in and of itself. Okay. Then he's in and out of spring practice. Okay. Kids are kids, right? Sophomore year comes. Again, they have a very deep DB room in Auburn, but he figured to play some. He played in just 4 games last year and has tried to follow that year as a red shirt. Now, I'm seeing mixed reviews on whether or not it was deemed a red shirt year or not, but 4 games last year and sat the rest of the season for, quote, personal issues. What does that mean? That's so vague. And I will say that in those 4 games, he had 6 tackles and a pick. I mean, he is a guy that does very well as rotational corner and the SEC level, right? Playing future pros. But then he has those personal issues, only gets in the field some, and well, I hope that he gets the redshirt and gets the extra year of eligibility for his sake, frankly, not just Houston's, but for his sake. This spring, 24/7 reports that on March 26th, he was dismissed from practice and asked to leave spring ball. Will later formally enter the transfer portal. And that 24/7 article, when I'm reading about leaving Auburn, called him missing games in the fall a suspension. Now, folks, I have coached some high school football. I was a run game coordinator and an offensive coach and an offensive line coach at the high school level. If I ever had to suspend a guy for 8 games and then had to ask him to leave the team in the spring, this is me feeling a little bit old school and shouting at clouds, asking them to get off my lawn. That feels flaggish. I don't want to jump necessarily to red flag without more concrete evidence and things like that, but that's not really out there. That feels flaggish. That feels like potential things to concern yourself about. If you're building a program, right, you don't want guys that you're going to be constantly having to discipline. Obviously, there's a route where this goes where the discipline is exactly what he needs, and he grows to a great young man. I don't mean to kids get to make mistakes. I don't mean to pass character judgments on anyone, and I probably should open with that more. But yikes, right? That's concerning. Now, a positive, a thing that I think the reason this is the second segment, not the first segment, is because there's a very realistic world where those flags are all in the past. Frankly, it sounds like he chose Auburn over LSU for Coach Zac Etheridge. Coach Zac Etheridge is at Houston, beat him here, right? He got here before and is pulling his kid back, right? You have to imagine if he chose Auburn over LSU and then Houston over anyone else to play with Zac Etheridge, that relationship is really, really important. Right? You have to imagine that whatever chemistry they've got, whatever understanding they've got, however it is that Etheridge relates to his players, this is significant. And for what it's worth, in a bigger than just JD Rhym perspective, that's a really good sign for Houston's what Houston's doing as coaches and recruiters, right? Really, really good sign if that's the way this goes, right? I also think, for what it's worth, that if there were personal issues, if there was something that led to the asking to leave this team in the spring or whatever, sometimes new scenery, like one of the biggest metropolitan areas in America, can be a really good thing. Can be a really, really good thing. A fresh start, new staff, new teammates, new city, new campus. That can all be really good too, right? And so I think that those two things make me trust this. I also think that, and you may call me naive, um, my just trust in what Willie Fritz is doing. Willie Fritz is preaching things about discipline, preaching things about playing the game the right way, preaching playing through the whistle, preaching defensive football, etc. Um, all of those things to me indicate that the program would not be so quick to go out and pull somebody in that they were concerned could hurt all of that, could harm all of that, could tear apart the things they're trying to build. So without knowing much about what the personal issue was, without knowing much about the circumstances of his dismissal from the team, without knowing those things, or even if I guess 24/7 is right and it was a suspension, maybe they're wrong and it wasn't, right? Without knowing those things, I have to say that my trust in Willie Fritz, when I'm understanding more and more about Zac Etheridge, these things make me feel like, okay, maybe those were isolated things that happened at Auburn. Houston's going to be different. The thing I know was an isolated incident at Auburn is that Auburn last year had five, when Rhym was playing, had five high-end DB recruits in a very short window. And all of those guys were playing a lot, but none of them were playing the whole game. And I think that there could be a part of this where, yes, Etheridge is nice. Yes, the city of Houston is nice. Yes, the Big 12 is nice. NIL, wherever it's coming from, is nice. However, the biggest piece of this may actually just be roster construction. Houston loses Isaiah Hamilton. That car's outside. Could you hear that? Dear Lord. That sounded really loud. Sorry about that. There's a world, though, where this is just roster construction, and Houston loses Isaiah Hamilton to an SEC school. An SEC corner is in the portal. Houston goes out and gets one. It's just people moving around like they do in college football, in college sports in 2024. And frankly, while I'd love to be something good about Fritz or something good about Etheridge, the most like run-of-the-mill explanation for how this got to be is probably that, right? And maybe I'm being a for nothing, but I have to think that honestly, it begs the question. I hope you don't mind me asking it. And I've been wrong in the past. I try to own it when I am, if I see that I am, and I'm hoping that me thinking there may be a flag to look at here is me being wrong again, right? Now, with that said, he is coming to play for Houston, and I think this cements the DB room as one of the best positions, if not the best position, on the team. And I want to take a second to talk about that. The biggest reason this is the most competitive room on the team, or the best room on the team, is because it is so competitive. When I talk about competing, I'm going to talk about Monopoly Go, and I'm sure at this point, I talk about like so many days, you're probably tired of me talking about it. But honestly, it's just a cool game that you can play on your own or with your friends. You can team up for time tournaments, work together, build up each other's boards. More you win together, the more awesome prizes you can unlock. Just a bunch of stuff to go get. Stickers, different playing pieces, fun emojis and stuff to send each other. Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every single day, constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games, so you can never like get bored or go through old. It's always new and exciting. There's always new timed events that help you win big as well, like massive multipliers for everything you win, or rent frenzies, or all kinds of stuff like that. with the always being something fun to discover on Monopoly Go, you got to get off the couch and go download it now for free at the Google Play or the App Store. Monopoly Go, game on. All right, so I'm starting to warm up to this idea that Zac Etheridge, new corners coach, new DBs coach, is coming into Houston having the best position group on the roster. Now, I think it's a nice problem to have that I don't know necessarily or definitively which position group that really should be. Um, I think the receivers room is talented. I think the running back room is talented. I think the D line room is talented. I just look at this DB room like, okay, in the last however many years, you could have called any one of those guys the best DB on the roster, or one of the two best DBs on the roster, and that's any of their starting five. Right now, if you look at the safeties, I think the safeties as a position are the strongest group on the team. You got AJ Halsey starting at probably free safety, covers most ground, ton of tackles, good ball skills, but will also hit you. Kentrell Webb, based on things you're reading, hearing, seeing in spring games and stuff like that, maybe playing some of the strong safety. Again, comfortable in the box, comfortable down low, but also good in coverage. Makes a lot of sense to be playing the strong. The one I'm most intrigued by, because I'm a youth guy, is obviously Maurice Williams, the impact freshman coming in this fall, was on campus and played in the spring. Actually had a pick in the spring game. I think he could play either safety. I think you have to have he and Halsey on the field at the same time. I don't think you can take Halsey off the field if he's healthy, right? Knock on wood. I just don't think you can take him off, right? Houston also runs a interesting combo position, it looks like, after watching them in the spring. There's not quite a safety, not quite a linebacker. We would have identified that as a rover, but whatever Houston's calling it, they have somebody extra out there as their 11th man. I think that's going to be Hershey McLaurin because the way he can kind of play down in the box and outside of it. Could also see a little bit smaller version of that being Jawan Gaston. Gaston's got elite speed, right? JUCO transfer a year ago, a year in the Big 12, a year at the school, you're getting comfortable playing this level of football. I think he could be ready for sure. And then at corners, well, I guess to start, your starting two corners are both big-time Power 4 conference transfers. Latrell McCutcheon had to miss last season because his waiver did not get approved, but transferred to Houston from USC. He'd followed Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma to USC the year prior. That's a big-time transfer. He's obviously coming to play with his brother, Latrevion, young linebacker on the Cougs. But Latrell, Central Texas product, again, 6'1" and change, positive wingspan, kind of long and lanky build, but definitely wants to come on and play some physical football. Sounds like the guy we opened today's episode talking about JD Rhym, right? Now, JD is 6'1"-ish. He is long. He is a $180. Both guys, frankly, and their pads and helmets look a lot alike, right? Just in terms of their frame. You also have like Jalen Emery playing behind them as a returning corner, right? Played in the Big 12 stuff last year. So you got some depth at corner. All of that is to say that this room, the DB's room, the secondary room, is really, really loaded with top end, front end starting talent. And frankly, that's a welcomed sight. Last year, Houston's defense was porous at times. It felt like anyone could kind of pick their score against some opponents in the Big 12. And while that never falls on any one position group, having the group that takes up half the field, again, I just mentioned 5 of 11 positions and talking about the secondary, I think that's important. And I think it's important to get those right. And I think that on the field, with Zac Etheridge coaching in, I think JD Rhym can be right. And frankly, I'm excited that such a talented football player chose Houston. And I think that I hope now I'm like second guessing the whole second segment. Like, I don't mean to be negative, Nancy. That's never who I really am. I just would feel all for naught if by the weekend some red flags popped up, or by a month later some red flags popped up, and we all got excited and didn't know that were coming. Frankly, the get your image right, get your head right kind of project, and taking a high-end transfer and turning him into a pro feels super Houston. And I wonder if that's, this second chance, this fresh start, for whatever it may be, ends up being that for JD, and then helping out this talented DB room. Now, I said I want to get you guys. So, last thing I'll do here. Wednesday night, my wife and I get home after school. We both work at the same school. AC upstairs is busted off. We turned it on. It actually got hotter with the AC on. I can't figure out what's going on. So we move everyone's stuff, because the bedrooms are upstairs, move everyone's stuff into the living room, and basically the one large living area room in the downstairs where the AC was working, so my 11-month-old can get sleep and not be in a dangerous situation. Again, it was like in the mid 80s in the other part of the house. Thankfully, by like 10:30, 11 o'clock, after working with a handyman, some over the phone and then in person, it sounds like some yard folks had either snipped or nicked or something, a water cord from something that was supposed to be helping cool down the air from the air conditioning, yada, yada, yada. Basically, we had to fix that, get everyone moved back to where they were supposed to be. It was late night on Wednesday night, to say the least, okay? Late night. But in telling you all that, this is my long story. Say, A, the house is fine. We're all good. Everyone's good. Everyone got their sleep. No one slept in a dangerous situation, especially not my newborn or my 11-month-old. I still call him my newborn. God, he's going to be a year old in a month. That's just crazy. But what that also means is that I told you guys in the YouTube short and all that I wanted to, try and give back to the community for supporting us. And obviously I couldn't put an episode out, and I want to do some question and answer or some mailbaggy kind of stuff. Just to kind of like let folks in on the conversation. If you have a question of the day kind of question, or a football or basketball kind of question, if you got an interest in another sport we don't typically talk about here, Locked On Cougs, and that kind of question, let me know in the comments. Find me on social media at Painsworth512. Get at me somehow. Again, that's PAINSWORTH 512. And let's bring it to the show. Let's present it. Let's answer some of your questions. I have loved this community. Building this over the last 18 months or so has been awesome. And frankly, so many supportive messages when I posted that about not being able to record that night because I was either going to be in the air conditioning room with a sleeping 11-month-old, or trying to fix the air conditioning in part of the house that was not working, getting hotter. And the support's been awesome. And if talking to you all is something I can do to give back, let's talk. So drop me a question. Let's talk about it. Locked On Cougs is your daily podcast on all things Houston Cougars, and a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.